Welcome to Radio 1 Berlin's historical series with Jason Honea, Lady Gaby, and music by Ken Shakin.
Hi everybody, welcome to Radio 1's historical series. This is Jason Honea, aka the Shitty Listener. I am Boy True. I'm here with my pal and collaborateur, Lady Gaby, and we are at the Zentralfriedhof here in Berlin, Lichtenberg, Lichtenfelde. Just to give you an indication to what it's like right now, it is the very beginning of February. It's mid-late afternoon. The sky is overcast with a light gray. We are here at the entryway to the cemetery, right at the main gate, standing directly here in front of the Gedenkstätte der Sozialisten. It was dedicated in 1956. It's basically an obelisk, Die Toten mahnen uns, that means the dead remind us, and basically in 10 graves situated around it are the graves, some real and some not, of socialist figures and fighters, not the least of which Karl Liebknecht, Rosa Luxemburg,
Walter Ulbricht.
Walter Ulbricht is over there on the backhand side, and then we also have here Wilhelm Pieck, etc., etc. Making his way around the rotunda are a bunch of other gravestones and reliefs from people earlier on in the century, probably from as well as from the beginning of the century. And then over here to my far left, we also have a big marble stone, and engraved are the names of hundreds of people, primarily socialists and communists, who were persecuted by the Nazis before and during the course of the war.
Yeah, and we've been walking around in the lockdown since cemeteries are in the fresh air and hardly anyone here. We've actually been going to different cemeteries in Berlin and paying our tributes to people who've influenced us or people who are of importance to us. And first it was just like a fun thing, and now we've been actually realizing how much we've been learning by visiting these cemeteries. And we want to collect all the stories and all the photographs that we've been taking and putting them in a book project with photos, stories, anecdotes, in this, that kind of stuff about the people whose graves we've been visiting.
Yeah, something about the Zentralfriedhof has been here since 1881. In 1891, this became the first cemetery in Berlin where poor people who could not afford graves were actually buried, the cost for the interment being taken on by the Berlin city government. This went on until about 1891, when all of a sudden, because so many well-to-do-ish people wanted to be buried here, given the pleasant location and how beautifully and wonderfully landscaped the cemetery itself was, that all began to change. What really ushered in a huge change for the cemetery was with the burial, or the interment rather, in 1921 of Wilhelm Liebknecht, the papa of Karl Liebknecht, yeah, who was the founder of the German SPD, the Socialist Party Germany, yeah, and with that then all kinds of prominent socialists decided they wanted to be buried here as well. An interesting note about where we're standing right now, although this is the monument to the socialists, it's my understanding that both Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht are actually not buried here. Rather, where they are buried is in the very back of the park, where we'll be going to towards the end of the walkthrough. So, we didn't visit this section of the cemetery the other day when we were here, but I do notice that over there are those two kneeling figures in the trees.
Oh,
and they
okay.
were mentioned. And there was at one point in time a Brunnen here, yeah, a fountain.
All
and I
right.
believe for some reason or other it was recently removed, as well as were all the benches here around it. Now I'm wondering what all these stones were about. Do you notice they all are
They're all the
extremely
same.
uniform? And most of these people all seem to have been born and died around the same time, which leads me to wonder, oh boy.
Oh, this was...
Shipwreck victims. Exactly, I forgot. Okay, Shipwreck, Schiffsunglück.
Oh, that's what it was.
Haben viele
Right.
Ferienkinder aus Schulen in Stadtbild Prenzlauer Berg und ihr erwachsenen Begleiter ums Leben, als sich auf dem Ausflugsschiff
Oh, okay.
Heimatland im Hafen Berlin-Treptow eine Explosion ereignete. Die meisten Kinder können nicht schwimmen, da zu dieser Zeit in den Schulen kein Schwimmunterricht möglich war. Wegen der politischen Spannung in der geteilten Stadt wird Rettungsarbeiten teilweise behindert.
Oh, that's
my
terrible.
God.
So 39 to 49 victims
Yeah.
fell and only 16 are buried here. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's sad.
And that is in Treptow or Teltow Canal? Where did it say that? Berlin-Treptow. Wow.
Oh, look, Liebknecht. Is
And
that his daughter or
It
anyway?
could be.
I mean, that's
But he had a son named Robert Liebknecht. And look at all the special flowers.
right.
Robert Liebknecht is the son that Käthe Kollwitz was sort of offering advice to
Oh, okay.
and was
Mentoring.
encouraging him to go to art school. And look,
Right.
that must be the Liebknechts, no?
Could be, yeah. I
Because
mean,
Wilhelm Liebknecht had 5 kids.
right, okay.
Yeah. What I find completely accessible about the cemetery is that even though there's a lot of people buried here, it's totally accessible in that it's just one big long strip between the S-Bahn-Station as well as the Lichtenberg S- and U-Bahnhof. It's sort of equidistant between both of them, and you can enter from the back or you can enter in from the front, and you can just make your way down the central passageway and cut a little bit left and cut a little bit right. There's always something interesting to look at. You guys, just for your information, this is very interesting as well too. This reminds me a bit, that big stone, that big brick structure right there, this does remind me a little bit of the Mies van der Rohe Denkmal. Yeah, a little bit. Do you notice the red triangle? That is the camp designation for political prisoners, specifically communists. I think there's about 235 graves over there. You know, there, from people who were initially buried all over other different parts of Berlin. Well-known communists who basically lost their lives within the time period of 33 to 45. Yeah, she is Käthe Kollwitz.
Oh, they were really good friends.
Yeah.
Nagel, Otto Nagel and her. So it's funny how they're buried next to each other. So this is the artist's corner of the cemetery where writers, painters, caricaturists, actors are buried. And we are standing in front of Käthe Kollwitz's grave, and her husband's grave is here too. He was a doctor, and they moved to Prenzlauer when they first got married, and they lived in Weissenfeldstraße, but now it's called Käthe Kollwitzstraße.
Mm-hmm.
And her art was always a response to the situation, to political situations, and her art was also inspired by personal tragedies, by personal experiences. She lost her first son,
Peter,
in
in the first year of the war in Belgium.
the Battle of Flanders, and that's when she became in contact with the pacifists and the socialists. And after Karl Liebknecht was murdered, she dedicated a woodcut to him. And one of her famous quotes, it was, "Art has to depict social conditions." In 1926, she signed the Declaration for the Preservation of All Berlin, that is to preserve characteristic streets, square images, and a lot of Berlin things.
Right.
And another quote from her was, "Those who do not move do not notice their chains. History is the only true teacher, and the revolution the best school for proletarians."
Mm-hmm.
Freedom is always and exclusively for the ones who think differently. Yeah, she was very, very interesting person, and
She was born in Königsberg
yeah,
in the 1880s.
yeah,
Went to art school in Munich. If I'm not mistaken, she was the first woman ever to be elected to
yeah.
or initiated into or inaugurated into
The Academy of
the
Artists.
Prussian Academy of Arts.
Yeah,
An honor of which she was quickly stripped of in January or February of 1930, or in February or March of 1983, as soon as the Nazis came to power. Yeah.
she became pretty much famous in all the art circles because also she was a woman, and she was one of the first ones to have work with painting, printmaking, sculptures, and her work was very political and depicted a lot of proletarian scenes and revolts, riots, and her art style was pretty much unique. Yeah, she was very much influenced by expressionism and realism. And she was a teacher, that's right. She was one of the first female teachers at the Women's Academy of Berlin, Women Artists Academy of Berlin. And she got attention with etchings, a weaver's uprising. That was basically one of the main etchings that gave her her reputation, and she was actually nominated to get a golden medal for that work in particular. But Kaiser Wilhelm II, he refused. He didn't like the work because he thought modern art was gutter art, that's what he called it.
Right, and also it wasn't nationalistic enough.
And he wasn't nationalistic, he was much more in the whole art that was
Preußen's
portraying
Glory,
Preußen glory
yeah.
and soldiers and men on horses. And so she was refused the medal, and she supported the KPD and the SPD. And because of her support for those two parties, she was forced to resign as the master class for graphics in Berlin. She was basically, the Nazis pushed her out, and she ended up working in her studio that's in Klosterstraße, number 75. That she had a studio there in room 210. She was working there since 1934, and it's funny because her home in Kollwitzstraße was bombed in 1943. The whole streets, the whole
43.
Buildings. Yeah. And a lot of her works were destroyed. She lost a lot of her etchings and sculptures
yeah.
in this bomb. Yeah. And unfortunately, she just died a few days before the war ended in Moritzburg, where she moved to in 1944. And what's still remaining from her time in this castle, it was like a villa castle thing, her diary, her bedside table, it's in a museum now, and a bust of Goethe that she had by her bedside.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
Otto Nagel and her were very good friends, and we can see they're kind of pretty much buried next to each other.
Or 23, I was taking a walk with my sister through some cemetery somewhere in California, and I just added a remark, how still sometimes I'm so, not creeped out, but just absolutely scared because I think of spirits just totally being stranded here. And my sister was like, no, the thing that's creepy about cemeteries is there's absolutely no spirits here. They've just completely flown the coop.
Right.
Yeah, we're the spirits walking around in here. When we were at the Chausseestraße Cemetery about 3 or 4 days ago, it was one of the first days in a while in which the sun was just absolutely shining.
Yeah.
And we hadn't been longer than 20 minutes inside the cemetery. We came into the part of the cemetery where Brecht and Heinrich Mann and all these people are. There was a big mausoleum directly to our left, and there was this beautiful little juvenile
Fox.
smoky fox that wasn't
a dump.
afraid of anything. I mean, of course, you pet him.
Yeah,
You
probably bite
didn't
your
want to pet
fingers
him,
off. Yeah.
but he was sniffing at you, thinking you had something for him to nibble on. And
then he
just
took a
shit
dump.
at the feet of Christ. We are approaching where the Revolutionsdenkmal used to be, and where supposedly both Liebknecht and Luxemburg are still to this day buried, albeit not in their boxes, so to speak. As I mentioned earlier, here are the graves of 33 people, all killed during the first 2 weeks of January 1919, after the Republic was declared. at some point in January of 1919. 33 coffins, 33 individuals, well, let's say 33 coffins were put in the ground here. However, one only ceremoniously, because at that point in time, Rosa Luxemburg's body had not yet been found. When they finally did recover her body from the Landwehr Canal, 4 months later.
In June, right?
I think so, yeah.
They
interred her here as well. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a big, huge, massive parade attended by thousands of people that wound its way through Berlin from Charlottenburg all the way to here.
Like
the military was out in force,
right,
but they were not prepared for this kind of turnout.
Yeah. And they still have those every year on the 15th of January. They march all the way from Prenzlauer Berg or whatever. They make this march and they come here to celebrate and pay their respects.
I believe I saw posters for it this year as well too, right?
It was happening this year, even though because it was a protest demo, and these are allowed in the times of Corona.
In 1926. The Revolutionsdenkmal, a big, huge, massive brick structure designed by Mies van der Rohe, Dutch architect, and also, if I'm not mistaken, the leiter of the Bauhaus there for a while, was erected. 11 years later, in 1935, after the Nazi seizure of power, it was razed by the Nazis, and all of these people essentially hauled out of the graves. And here's where there's some confusion. Initially, I believe they wanted to reinter them back over there where we started our talk, namely over there by the Gedenkstätte der Sozialisten. However, that didn't happen, and what the Nazis essentially did is they just threw all their bones back into a big, huge hole here, and that was that. So essentially, they are all here, but in somewhat of a disarray. So here we are now at the gravesite, as well as where the Van der Rohe design monument was. You can see now that essentially all that's left is basically the foundation of that colossus. There it is depicted over there on that display. Here are the gravestones.
Yeah, when we were here mid-January, there was fresh flowers because the march just happened a few days before that. So there was just like fresh flowers on most of these plaques. So yeah, there's Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht
They're right here in the front.
Right in the middle. And she's also Pisces like me, born on March the 5th.
5th, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And she's born in Poland. She's very well known in Germany for being a Marxist, an anti-war activist, revolutionary socialist, and a philosopher. Born in Zamość in Poland, Polish Jew. She ended up going to one of the exclusive girls' schools in Warsaw that was just basically reserved only for the Russians. I don't know how she ended up going there, which was basically a good thing for her. So she got really well educated. She played a key role in the founding of the Polish Social Democratic Party. She was killed in 1919 because she led the German workers' uprising after World War I. And she began her career basically while she was in this school in Warsaw, and was forced to leave, to go into exile because of all her associations and her support for the communists and revolutionaries. And she had to go to, she was in exile in Switzerland because the Russian police became very aware of her activities. And then she came to Berlin and became a German citizen at the age of 28 after she married for convenience in order to become a German citizen. And she came to Berlin, and she was wanted to be associated with a very well-organized SPD party. she became in Berlin one of the most respected and beloved leaders of the international socialist movement. She was all for revolutionary goals rather than parliamentary reform. The police, they dubbed her as the Red Rose. During World War I, she was in prison for her revolutionary activities and her association with Karl Liebknecht, and she helped found the revolutionary Spartacus Union with him together. After prison in 1918, disappointed with the failures of the socialist revolution in Germany, she founded the German Communist Party and its newspapers called the Rote Fahne, the Red Flag, and drafted the program for the party. And together with Liebknecht, they used revolution and activities against the Ebert. And during his government, Ebert government, Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg, they really urged the workers to go on strike. And during his government, between 1918 and 1919, there was a lot of strikes and outbreak of violence. And I think we are seeing that actually in that series, Babylon Berlin. That's basically where that series started. They were concentrating on all these uprisings in 1918, 1919. She supported the German workers in their call for revolution, and the troops were called in and they crushed the revolt pretty much very fast. And on the January the 15th, Liebknecht and Luxemburg were caught
hanging out at a friend's house,
killed. Yeah, basically she's very famous for pretty much being one of the first people to start the communist parties in Germany, and she also praised and was a supporter of the Russian Revolution, but did criticize them after she realized that they were going on the wrong path. And she developed a humanitarian theory of Marxism. Yeah, basically she was very much for freedom of speech, freedom of press, abolition of death penalty, and supported the Russian Revolution, as I said. She wrote an essay called The Accumulation of Capital that urges...
Right to assembly as well, too? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that urges that capital accumulation causes imperialism.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can see the effects of that today, pretty much. And I think she was combating, and she was like a real, knew where it was all heading, and I guess that's why she was killed by the Freikorps. And there was just like right-wing paramilitary division of German
loyalists,
police or something like army. They're the ones who pretty much crushed the strikes that the workers went on. I don't know, I've seen a lot of black and white footage from those times, like in documentaries where they're all like, just these Freikorpses pounding on the workers. They're just marching up to Reichstag or up Unter den Linden or in Hermannplatz in Neukölln.
Well, also lots of firefights between them and communist soldiers and workers.
Yeah.
They tend to be somewhat better armed, though.
Yeah, that's why she was obviously, hated by them, and because she was like on the side of the workers and was demanding free everything, free speech. She was, very early anarchist. I mean, I guess we're still fighting for a lot of the ideals that she was fighting for.
Yeah.
Like a century later.
Essentially, what happened was the media kind of got behind the Freikorps, etc., and basically made her out to be the one that was completely and totally responsible for all of this agitation and any bloodshed that resulted and ensued. And for that reason, she got this nickname Bloody Rosa, which is completely unjustified. Yeah. If anything, she was calling for something else, but things quickly just spun out of control. They were at a friend's house in southwest Berlin somewhere. Somebody, it's not quite clear.
Were they hiding or?
Hiding. Somebody eventually found out it was them and tipped off the police and the Freikorps. And apparently she was reading poetry when she was abducted. Yeah.
She probably knew her end was coming.
Exactly. They both knew.
Yeah. We are at the end of our tour. We're actually very close to the exit of the cemetery back into the other world, but we are standing here and there's a lot of stones here, gravestones from a lot of the communist fighters, who were, I guess, around, Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht. The Nazis basically just like lumped them all here, or
No, these are all people who died in the first weeks of January of 1919.
the Nazis destroyed this.
The Januarkämpfer.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
These people were initially all buried here in their caskets,
That's right. Okay.
with the exception of Rosa Luxemburg, because her body had not yet been found. Okay. In 1935, the Nazis then came in here, tore this Mies van der Rohe designed monument down, disinterred all these people. The plan was initially to take them forward to where we started off the tour,
Right.
over there at the Gedenkstätte der Sozialisten, but then for whatever reason decided they weren't going to do that, trashed the coffins, and
Yeah.
basically threw all of the bones in here hodgepodge.
Okay.
So essentially all of these people are probably just buried one on top of the other, side
Yeah.
by side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is where we are, this monument.
And and these stones basically represent where at one point in time those coffins were.
Should we just go and say all the names of
Sure.
the fallen communists?
Sure.
That's also really interesting. Okay, so
Okay.
we can start. And Jakob Meyer, Franz Kaber, Otto Eisner, Emil Ochs, Wilhelm Tunak, Rosa Luxemburg, Karl Liebknecht, Paul Hermann, Oskar Sorer, Wilhelm Bag, Arthur Schottler und Karl Jupper, Wilhelm Rudlinger, Fritz Mehner, Wolfgang Fernbach, Karl Grubusch, Walter Heiser, Erich Kluger, Fritz Thiel, Leo Fischer, Kurt Kepler, Rudolf Starker, Wilhelm Treischler, Erich Krauser, Robert Pesch, Leo Jorgicius.
Yeah.
That's
Gaugis,
who
I
is
think he was a Lithuanian guy. Mm.
Johannes Knüppel, he's quite famous too. Heinrich Schaumann, Ernst Kühne, Bernhard Müller, Paul Wackermann, Karl Rohe, Karl Seichter, Ernst Schwarzkopf, Karl Hennig, Hermann Merx, Kurt Wolf, and Heinrich Wöller. There's only one woman amongst all these men, these great men.
For the record, Leo Jorgicius was Rosa Luxemburg's part-time lover
Oh,
and lifelong
okay.
friend.
Okay,
Off and ons. Yeah.
great. Oh,
Yeah? Cool. That was the Radio On historical series.
with Jason Honea and Lady Gaby. And watch out for our book on this project.
Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Radio On Berlin's historical series with Jason Honea and Lady Gaby, with music by Ken Shakin. This was a Radio On production. For more information, visit www.radioonberlin.com. Thank you for listening.